Ready? Great. The people are here, right? Full time and learning here full time. Of course, welcome to the old friends that came back that knew our beloved Eliahu. Welcome. And we're privileged that we had, this would have been Eliahu's job to make sure this was broadcast. But in the interim, when Eliahu left, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the week before he left. He sent Gadi along to help us. And he sent Gershon back to help us. Right? And he sent someone else.
Harry.
No, there you are. Gabriel. It took 3 for starters. I mean, the man was worth $1 million. He couldn't replace this man, as we're talking about. We're here today to honor the memory and to say Divrei Shvach and praises for Eliahu Zalman ben Yissachar Halevi Law. And we're especially privileged today that we have with us, hopefully on the broadcast that's going out, his mother. She should live long and well. His brothers, Harry and Joel, and his sister, Betty. And from all of us, our condolences on behalf of the whole yeshiva and all the people that knew him and loved him so much. Right? Menachem Avol to you at this time for the loss of your precious brother and of your son. Right? That we all loved, as you know very much. Who spent his last couple of years of his life in paradise with us, founding a place that he loved and people who loved him that he loved immensely. I started making a list of what I wanted to say about Eliahu. I ran out of the first page. I'd run out of 100 pages if I tried to write the list. The man was a giant among giants. I'm calling all the Jews giants. This man was a giant among men. And as I was davening just now, I just thought of something. He went back home to his Father in heaven because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in this season of Tisha B'Av, when we're waiting and we're crying out for the redemption, it should come this year that we should have a great feast on Tisha B'Av and not a fast and not a day of mourning. That the King of the universe, the Rabbanu Shalom, he says, if I'm going back down to earth to build my house, I want Eliahu with me. I need that man. There's nothing he can't do, and there's nothing he couldn't do. With a professionalism and an exactitude, you knew when he got a job done, it was done right. It may have taken him 4 extra days than anybody else would have done it. They wouldn't have gotten it done as well as he did. He was a man who needed perfection in what he did because he saw that was the way of the world. I made a bunch of notes. I never read my notes when I speak. Because my feelings for Eliahu was so deeply embedded in my heart, as with all of us. Right? Of what a special human being he was. In the Jewish tradition, we have a word called chaver. Chaver isn't just meaning a friend. Chaver is somebody you trust when they did something with the fullness of their heart. And they did something that was done in the proper way and only the proper way. And anything they said or anything they did, you can trust it was done with a great deal of integrity and it was done properly. Whether it was separating your trumas and your mices from your food, if it was fixing something, if it was learning. Eliahu to me was a chaver. Eliahu to me was a brother in the deepest sense. Eliahu to me was a man I trusted literally with my life, and my children felt the same way, and my family felt the same way. He was an epitome of integrity. It wasn't right, like they talk in governments now, that you have to do things politically correct. He was good to everybody, but he stood firmly on the truth. And political correctness, he did it as gently as possible, never got compromised when it came to the truth of the Torah. He was such a man of integrity. He came here, and there were many things that he didn't understand about what the Torah had to say and what he was taught. And that man, no matter what I told him, he says, that's what the Torah says. I don't understand it many times. I don't agree with it. But if that's what the Torah says, that's what I do. And he never backed down from that. Even though he disagreed sometimes vehemently about what the thing was that was said and why it didn't make any sense to him, he says, I'll do it. Nasa v'nishma. A living epitome of doing things and then learning about them in depth of why it's true because the Torah said it. There was a Malava Malka last night in California. And Sylvia, who I have thanked with the deepest gratitude, who was the in-between who brought Eliahu to us, to this yeshiva, and to myself, and Rabbi Weiss, and everybody here 2.5 years ago approximately, right? Our deepest gratitude. He went everywhere looking for a place to learn. Nobody wanted him. He was too old. He was too this. We got on the phone, and within 5 or 10 minutes, we knew that it was right, and he moved right in. He's been here ever since. He was here from that moment. It went that quickly when he found this was his right place. I just wanted to say, because I was told that last night, they said he was a man who spoke little and did much. That was Eliahu. Right? He wasn't a man of so many words, and he had to be, he was, but man doing much, boy, did he do much. Also, they spoke when he did the job, as we said, the job was well done. And he substituted the feelings of others for his own feelings. He pushed his own self aside to see that everybody was happy. The only pasuk that I could find in the Torah, well, hundreds of them literally, but one of them kept sticking out to me, and I got to say, Shalachor, Shalachor, Shali, Shalachor. What's yours is yours, and what's mine is yours. He didn't just say the pasuk, and what's that? That's called the chassid. That's chassidus. He gave his entire being to all of us, to everyone. And there were many times as being the person who was in charge of the yeshiva here and in charge of the people that were staying here, he didn't agree with people. He treated them all with such utter respect, it was unbelievable. You ever know, he told me sometime in the back, we had to talk about people who were here. He says, I don't care for that person's behavior. I had 2 people here. Nobody knows them. They were here very quickly. He couldn't stand either one of them, but neither one of them left this place thinking that there was any tiner on them from that man. He took care of him. He came to me and said, that guy's got to get out of here. But when it came to the time of dealing with him, with love and respect, right, and gently moved him out. This place was in trusted, good hands when he was here, comparable to what he did. As I said, he had integrity. He seemed like a simple man. It's not the kind of man that you thought was as wise as he was. Wisdom? Incredible. Incredible. He had wisdom in the deepest places. If you gave him something to do that he didn't understand, what did Eliahu, Lord, do? He took it apart, saw how it worked, and then went and put it back together again and fixed it. I said, you never saw that before. When he came here, he was computer illiterate. When he said that it was needed by the yeshiva, he went and he worked step by step. He had a strange habit. He'd go 3 days in a row without sleeping. And then suddenly I'd come in the morning and he'd be sitting in the chair in the office just snoring away, right? Waking the neighbors up with his snore. But so sweet. And if I needed something done, if anybody needed something done, it was what you need gets done. In the evening when we had work to do, Eliahu Law would come and say to me, go home. I said, we got work to do. He says, I'll take care of you. You go home to your wife. Go home, get some rest. That's what we're talking about rest. You haven't slept in 2 days. You go home and get some rest. I got it covered. Everybody's burden was his burden. But not with a feeling like, oh God, I got to do more. It was a feeling of open arms, of welcomeness, that he had the opportunity to serve Klal Yisrael. And that he had the opportunity to serve this yeshiva He waited his whole life to be able to do this. He loved God. He loved Torah. He loved everybody sitting in this room and the people that we hear that are no longer sitting in this room and in other places. There was nothing he didn't give. His entire being. And this was not a man that was living a simple, pain-free life. This was a man, if I had his pain, I would be screaming in the hospital for more morphine. And he was coming out of his room to help us. He was coming out of his room to do whatever he could. He hardly ever saw his bed. He was too busy. And he would just go and sit in the chair and fall asleep. And when he had enough sleep, he'd get up and he'd continue from where he left off. With an obsession, but not a sick obsession. It was an obsession of love of God and wanting to see his most important statement that he made to me, and what I feel was essential in his heart, was this place has to stay open. This yeshiva was special. It gave him a home. It gave him a place that he'd been looking for all his life. And he saw it happening to so many other people. And he dedicated himself to it with every ounce of energy of his life. When Mr. Salad, who was a very close friend of his, left the world, the Divrei Shvach of Hesed, the Salads will tell you, Rebbitzin Salad, Jamie will tell you, Friday nights, they get this huge platter of chicken and potatoes and vegetables all made up, so she wouldn't have to trouble herself to make Shabbos. Eliahu, he'd be in here during the day. And when he cut up vegetables, he didn't just cut up vegetables. He cut up vegetables, every garlic. I saw him take once, he wanted to make garlic potatoes. He took 6 packages, which has 4 garlics each in them. That's what he's doing. He's making garlic potatoes. 1 garlic, 2 garlics, 6 packages. He peeled them all individually. He chopped them up all into fine pieces. He baked potatoes, and he stuffed them back into the shells. Right? That's the kind of human being he was. It had to be right. There was no compromise on his part. Events happened in the yeshiva. I knew one thing. Rabbi Weiss knew one thing. It would be ready. A half hour before, you would think, what are you doing? We got an event here in half an hour. The chairs were set up. The speaker was set up. He figured out how to set up the video from equipment that came from the Stone Ages in terms of equipment. And he made it work. And he made it work. And he did it. And he had it. He says, get out of here. I said, I got to help you. It's not going to be ready. It's going to be ready. I told you it's going to be ready. It's going to be ready. Right? As Rabbi Weiss said, he said, you can eat off the floors in my house. Eliahu made sure that you could eat off the floors here also. He was makpid on keeping the place spotless because that was a Kiddush Hashem. That's the way you should act, and that's the way you should be. In terms of my learning, Eliahu would say to me, he'd say, that has to be done. Write that letter. And then about 30 seconds later, he'd say, I know, you got to go learn. Go learn. I'll take care of it. He even figured out how I wrote. He figured out how I misspelled. He figured out how I didn't use punctuation. And then wrote the letter for me as I would write it and gave it to me to approve that it was in my style before he sent it, so that I could sit and learn. But one thing about Eliahu when it came to learning, it looked like he was working all the time, but I want to tell you something. Eliahu made sure when he worked that there was a shir going on in one of the rooms and he was listening to every word. And afterwards, if you didn't think he learned, you'd come over and ask questions about it and say, what was that? What was that? You thought he was working. He's working on the yeshiva. He's working on fixing the fan. Whatever he was working on, he always made sure if it was possible to hear a shir, he'd do his work in the earshot of the shir, that he would be able to get learning it and not mavatal his time. Someone asked me a question a little bit while. Sippy asked me a question about his teaching Hebrew. He got the point. He listened again and again and again, and he learned what I taught in my grammar class. And he helped people. He just sat around. He didn't ask. No one asked him. He caught the point. When he caught the point, his face was light up. He had a smile on his face all the time. And with all his pain and with all the suffering, he had a smile on his face. But he picked something up and he had a thirst to teach and to learn. He loved the prophets. He read the prophets through again and again and again. On Shabbos, he'd come in here, right? He'd be with Gabriel. He'd be sitting in here learning the books of the prophets. Loved it. Was so in love with his life, with all that pain and suffering that he had going on simultaneously. He could not tell it because he loved so much what he's doing. He loved the Torah and he loved God. I miss him. We all miss him. He was definitely one of the most special, as I mentioned, human beings I ever met. His sensitivity level, his hasmada in being involved in the yeshiva, hasmada being an emotional involvement. As I started thinking about writing this, it's funny right now, as I think that I started writing this and looking at all these things, every time I thought of something, I started crying. I said, boy, it's going to be hard to speak today. I'm not going to stop crying. His memory is so sweet to me. I miss him like no one's business. I asked mechila from our friend Eliahu, Zalman. I asked forgiveness on myself. I didn't do more for him. And I was just learning the Sefer HaChinuch yesterday for a shir that I gave. And it said clearly, and it's an old statement, but I just saw it again yesterday. You don't know the greatness of somebody until they leave. They were talking about baseless love in the newspaper yesterday. They talked about how somebody came along and saved the tragedy from happening in Yerushalayim during a terrorist attack. And so you didn't know, and everybody adorated, and everybody praised that person without end. But they didn't know that person's greatness till the moment came. Eliahu showed us his greatness while he was here. How great he was hasn't become known to me in the ultimate measure of it, not until he's left now. And what I saw when he was alive was minuscule compared to who he really was. I personally asked mechila from him, his family, that I didn't get more involved in understanding his medical problems. What is. And I certainly tried to be there for him. But I asked mechila, I asked forgiveness. And Rabbi Weiss said to me this morning, he'll probably say too when he speaks, in the future we have to learn when we have somebody so precious as this, we have to pay more attention to make sure that we take care of their needs. That we're more sensitive. We have to gain sensitivity. Eliyahu taught us that. This man was a prize, a jewel, a gift from God to all of us and to the yeshiva without measure. And again, as I was davening, I just thought if I had to have somebody on my team in anything I did in this world, whether it was in learning, or whether it was in fixing things, or whether it was in building Bayit Shlishi, Eliyahu, Zalman, then Yissachar Halevi Law would be on the top of the list of the person I would want on my team to walk through this world. I'm grateful without end that I got to spend a little bit more than 2 years, between 2 and 3 years with such a man. I'm sure the lessons that he taught me in just being here will live on for a long time and continue to blossom and be recognized and realized by me in the future. And I hope in some way we can find a way to memorialize our friend in the proper fashion. We've talked about a lot of things. We've not come to any conclusions. One thing we can ask is a list of Mishnayot. We would ask people to learn Mishnayot, to try to fill up the whole Seder of the 6 Sidurim and Mishnayot and all the Masechtas, to try to do it before the end of the year, right? To elevate his soul, if it's not already in the highest of the highest realms with the King of the universe, even to raise higher. And then together, hopefully, to find a way and expression to memorialize our friend and keep the dream alive of this yeshiva that he had and he loved so much, to make sure that it stayed functioning, because there are so many people out there that need it. So many mature and motivated people that found what he found out in the world. No, there's no place for you. You're too old. Sorry, can't use you. You're too opinionated. Whatever he found. And there was a place that opened their arms to him and said, come learn. If you're a beginner, we'll give you the Masorah. If you're more advanced, we'll teach you how to learn and how to think in a straight way. If you're a working man, we'll give you a shia that will allow you to come in for an hour or two and learn. He saw that, he felt it, he loved it, he fought for it, he worked for it. On behalf of all of us, I'm saying my goodbyes, but he'll never leave us. He'll never leave being in our heart. And I look and I hope and I pray in the future that we and the Law family can get more connected, because the fruit on that tree that came out from Mrs. Law, his 2 brothers and his sister, I look forward to meeting them. Because I spoke to him on the phone, I felt like we were relatives through the connection that we both shared Eliahu. Thank you for letting me say these few words of shock for a friend. It's totally inadequate for who he was. But for one of the greatest, and maybe the greatest man I ever met, maybe in the world, in my life. And I've met a lot of people, but he's certainly right up there on top of the list when it comes to the man that was absolutely unique. May his soul find a blessing in the Olam HaEmes. May he find his dwelling place with Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, and Shlomo. May he be a melech for us. May he be up there to help us to be able to get stronger and do better and marbitz Torah in the world to bring the Geula. And may he be on the party of those that accompany HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he returns to earth to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. I'm sure we'll find Eliahu right up there, right, making sure that it's done in a proper way. May his memory be for a blessing. I'd like to ask Rabbi Weiss to speak. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to, in advance, I want to apologize because nobody can accuse me that I was sitting here and listening to everything that Rabbi Gold said, and I'm just going to repeat it because I sat down last night, I thought about it, and I wrote it here, but I have to apologize in advance for boring everybody because I'm going to end up saying the same thing. But the fact of the matter is, my one consolation is that I'm sure that if I went around this room and everybody else said a hesped for Eliyahu, the result would be the same. Everybody would say the same thing. Because that's who he truly, this man, this is who he truly was. And the fact is that I guess the one consolation, the one justification for doing this is Chazal say, this just came to my mind really, that Chazal asked the question, you know, you come to the yeshiva every day to learn. So you learn one page of Gemara, and then the next day you learn something new. So learning is exciting because you're always learning something new. But now you got to get up every day in the morning, and then in the afternoon you got to stop your learning, and at night you got to stop your learning, whatever else you're doing, and you got to daven 3 times a day. And you're saying the same thing. So how's your davening different today than it was yesterday, and how's it going to be different tomorrow? So the answer is that tefillah is avodah shebelev. You say the same words, And you got to take those words and put them in your heart each time more and more than you did the time before. So even though I'm going to repeat everything that Reb Shalom said, of course not as well, but I'm going to repeat the same thing, but still it's worth for all of us to hear it again and again, that these ideas should permeate our hearts, to understand for ourselves, not only for him, but to understand for ourselves truly how important a person he was and how important it is for us to recognize who Eliahu was for our own selves. And I'm really going to preface whatever I have to say today. I want you to understand that really it would be improper for me, being a rabbi in the yeshiva, not to say anything about Eliahu. It just wouldn't be right. But the fact of the matter is, anything that I say now, I'm really saying as a friend, not as a Rav, as a friend, and truly he was a person to me who was a role model. And the fact of the matter is that when I say he was a friend to me, it doesn't mean that he treated me like a friend. He respected me in ways that are much more than I deserved. And he certainly treated me like a Rav. And the relationship that we had was so deep and so intimate, so loving between the two of us. And again, like I say, my one consolation in not wasting your time is that I'm sure if this opportunity was given to everybody here, all of us would say the same thing. And really, I'm going to just say things personal and things that went on between the two of us over the last 2.5 years. So I'd like to start with something that the Mesilas Yesharim says. In the book of the Path of the Just, he gives a simple example to define what is the love of Hashem, what is Ahavas Hashem. Very simple example. It says a father asks his son to bring him something to eat. Of course, the father doesn't ask the son for anything special because he doesn't want to burden his son. He knows his son has got so many other things that he has to do. So he says, maybe you can bring me some lunch. Certainly there are things that he would prefer, foods that the father would prefer, things that he enjoys more. But he leaves it up to the son's discretion. And the fact is, all good children want to fulfill the mitzvah of honoring their parents, kibbud avim. So all good children want to do it. One says, however, since Daddy didn't ask me for anything special, I'll bring him a peanut butter sandwich. Easy. And I can get back. I can return my own affairs. Give him some bread, some carbs, some protein, and that should get him through the day. The other son asks himself, what does Daddy enjoy? He knows his father has preferences. And he knows that his father didn't want to burden him. So he figures out what he enjoys the most and sets out to prepare him a lavish meal. This is the difference between one who serves by obligation and one who serves to please, one who serves out of love. Eliyahu, our beloved Chaver, he served out of love. He served to please. And anybody who came in close contact with him knew that to be true. As Reb Shalom said, this yeshiva, because of the group that we are, fortunately and unfortunately, the yeshiva sponsors yard sites. People in the yeshiva already are people that have lost loved ones, and they sponsor a meal in the yeshiva at the time of the yard site. And thank God, we also have siyums on and off. We have the daf yomi in the yeshiva, and we have a siyum every once in a while, and there's always a meal to prepare. And the truth is, I would plead with Eliyahu. I'd said there was a siyum or a yard site, it was coming up. People would ask him, first of all, if Eliyahu does the work. It's cheaper than ordering it from someplace outside. Secondly, whatever Eliyahu did, as Rabbi Shalom says, it was a banquet. Remember that year we finished Psachim, and Rav Shalom said the second half of Psachim was all involved with meat, the Korban Pesach. After finishing Psachim, we had to make this big, enormous barbecue. And Eliahu says, thank God we were still doing much better physically. And he went ahead and he just barbecued all this meat with such joy and such happiness. And after the Korban Pesach, we talked about meat so much. How can it be that we can't have a siyum that's involved with meat? So we went out there and he did it. But as he became more and more infirm, as time went on, nobody realizes. Only the people that were close to him could realize how infirm he was, how much he suffered, truly. And I would plead with him when I see him or a yahrzeit was coming, not to assume any responsibility for preparing the food. I said, it's too much for you to stand on your legs. And he would say, don't worry, I'll be all right. Sure, sometimes it happened even at the end. He finally gave in. We would buy 5 or 6 pizzas for imagine in this yeshiva, we'd have 1 million of people and 5 or 6 pizzas were consumed at a siyum. So Eliahu was worried about people eating pizza. Our guys should eat 5 or 6 pizza pies, and then, with the Yeshivas Rabbi Akiva crowd. So for that reason alone, he wanted to prepare something else. So sometimes he would make tuna fish, he'd cut up salads, and who knows what. But finally, towards the end, he would give in, and he stopped doing it. As Rav Shalom said, when Rav Kessin was here this summer, the summertime he was here, 5 straight weeks of lectures. He was a guest lecturer for 5 straight weeks, which meant taking apart the tables, moving out all the big chairs, bringing in plastic chairs, setting up the amplifying system in yeshiva. And of course, few of us would offer, he'd say, no, you're going to get in my way, I'll get it done faster, doing it myself. And you can imagine what every time 5 weeks in a row, he had dealing with to make sure the sound system was proper and getting everything set up and taking the tables out. I remember him schlepping them, picking them up and putting them in the hallway and then taking out the chairs. I would try to help him and he just said, go home, you're in my way. You take care of it. But I can't imagine how difficult it was for him to do those things. No way of knowing how much he suffered. But this was this man's ofi. This was this man's character. He lived for one purpose, as Shalom mentioned. We all know that he lived for only one thing, to make other people happy. He cared very little about pleasing himself. And in truth, it really was a simple task because he needed very little. As all of us know, a very, very simple person, but simple in his material needs, in his worldly needs. He was a person that knew everything about everything, whether technical or intellectual. Come to the Daf Yomi, and I got to say, of all the questions, and he couldn't read the Gemara. He would sit through a Daf Yomi class, and he's a man that would listen so intently to every detail, and the insightful questions that he would ask. I mean, he really would hit the nail on the head so many times, and he would think about these things and really try to understand. As Rabbi Shalom said, even though there were things he couldn't understand, he would really work hard to grasp it. Thank God I was sometimes really able to get through to him. And he would really understand. I mean, coming from a background like his and starting out with Yiddishkeit, as all of us, the Torah, very often, the Torah for us is difficult to understand. But he would work he would struggle, and he would nod his head to the extent that he was able to understand it. He's a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And considering his background, the type of guy he was, you'd think you could talk to him about the military, those that knew that he was in the army. You could talk to him about hunting, talk to him about the best way how to grill meat and how to unplug a sewer. And the truth of the matter is, one Friday afternoon, I called him up on the telephone, and he was on his knees at my house, and that's exactly what he did. Till Shabbos came in. I didn't know how I was going to live that Shabbos. He came over, an emergency, and he unplugged the sewer. But you think that's the type of guy, he was, happy-go-lucky guy that knew about those things. But the fact of the matter is, anybody that thought that about him totally missed the truth. He was a man of deep philosophical understanding. Whenever there were discussions around the table would involve moral, ethical issues, he had a lot to say about them, and most of these issues were things he spent much time reading about. He knew the technical terms of philosophical and moral ideas. He was out there. He read about them, he contemplated them, and he had a lot to say about them. He was really a very, very deep and a man of great and deep understanding. He was really a man of all seasons. He was a little younger, as a matter of fact, than all of us. Tragedy. And unfortunately, he did pass away at the time that he did. I wasn't aware enough. Rav Shalom told me that he did realize, as he was towards the end of the time, he couldn't make it up the steps without stopping. Had a difficult time breathing. I didn't realize how severe and how serious the situation was. And as I mentioned it to him, I hope that in the future, God forbid it should never be, but if we're in a situation like this, that I hope that we'll be more helpful and more involved in helping to help somebody to deal with their medical crises. But anyway, he was a little bit younger. There still wasn't a generation gap. We were able to communicate about TV, American culture, in a way that brought so much humor and joy to the yeshiva, and to me in particular. I really had a friend who I enjoyed spending time with him, but as much as he enjoyed the sweeter side of life, he understood the essence of life. As a matter of fact, one of the great things were that it was a joking communication. He was the only one that somehow it tickled him. When I was giving the daf and people would start to fall asleep, all of a sudden I would change my tone and I would start saying the daf is like some kind of real yeshivish kind of guy with the yeshivish kind of sprach to it, a yeshivish kind of language to it. And he'd be sitting in the other room and all of a sudden he'd burst out in laughter. And I was doing it to wake up the guys, but we had a communication line between the two of us. The things that tickled me tickled him. And we were just really so connected about even the TV shows that we watched as kids and enjoyed. We just had such a enormous connection and a happiness just joking about and talking about those things. It's frightening. It really is frightening to realize that a person relatively new to Yiddishkeit figured out what the essence is, that for so many of us, it takes so much time to get the point. And many of us, it takes a lifetime. He understood Hashem did not put him here to live for himself. He was here to help others, to see to it that everybody in the world would be happy. This was an ideal for him. He didn't care about himself, in the sense that he made sure the yeshiva was always clean. And as Rav Shalom and I remember, he had to clean up from people who sometimes behaved like children, both in the kitchen and in the bathroom. And believe me, that was no simple situation. And although he would call this to their attention, he would never stop his duty. He did whatever he could to help us administratively. Whatever he didn't know, he would figure it out somehow because he cared and he wanted to get it done. And even the last project that we're dealing on, that thank God in the next couple of days, hopefully our website will be up. Eliahu and I were talking about how to do it and how we were going to do it together. And he really didn't know what to do. But we said we're just going to figure it out. We're going to work with these people in America. It turned out that Siyata Dishmaya happened. He left us and Hashem sent us God to Gadi to do the work for us. But we had a plan and we were going to figure out how to get it done. He treated his mentors with this endless desire to please. Before I started giving the daf, every time there was always a glass of ice water waiting there. Shabbos, I walked into the base medrash and my Gemara was waiting on my shtender. when my microphone didn't work and I had to hold it in my hand, he knew that I didn't really want to do it. He knew that it was uncomfortable for me, so he'd figure out a way how to fix it so I can put it back on my head and wear it on my head. And he did whatever he could to make sure. He uses a novel approach, how to fix it. I had a leaky wall for 10 years in my house. I used to repaint it, fix it. The next winter, again, all the paint and the plaster would just melt away. He came, he scraped the wall down with his knees, and I didn't know. Maybe I was wrong for asking him to do it. And he just came and he tried to figure out, get to the root of the problem, and to figure out what to do, how to solve it. We'll find out next winter if the problem was solved, but he did something that nobody else ever did. We got to the end and I hired another painter. He wanted me to let him paint the wall. I said, I can't let you do any more. It's too much already. And when we finally discussed how much money I should pay him for his work, it was a joke. I had to force him to take even a little bit more than the little he asked for. And believe me, he needed that money. It's not that he didn't, he needed that money. He was kulo chesed. There was one time in my life, we were out in the car together, and I was double parked on Rehov Agripas, and he had to go into a tambour store to buy something for me. My wife called me up on the telephone. She said, I went to the shuk and I forgot a bag of 30 shekels worth of fruit in the shuk. So I was double parked and there was nothing I could do. And I just happened, I guess I was talking to Eliahu about it. He said, I'm going to go back. I'll go get it for you. I said, you don't even know where she put it. And for 30 shekel, the guy may not trust you. And the walk back there, it's so difficult for him. It was the winter time, it was cold. Of course, cold never bothered him. But he went and he insisted upon going, and I couldn't stop him. And he went back to retrieve the bag of fruits, and the man didn't believe me. He brought it back to me. And this was his way of life. How many of us, in all our years of being from, even B'nai Torah, can say we live selfless lives? With all the pressure he had, people in the yeshiva making a mess for no good reason, and we'd have to clean up, he never lost it. The only time that I remember when he was in so much pain and he felt miyuash, he felt lost of hope, he would pull away in a small way, kind of distance himself from me, from everything that was going on around him, because he just couldn't handle it anymore. But that was the worst of it. He never lost it in the way, in the respect and the way that he spoke to me or any of us. The last Pesach, I invited him to come with me to Ramat Beit Shemesh for the Seder. He was going to join me at my daughter's house, and we would find a place for him to sleep. And he insisted that he wanted to try to do a Seder on his own. He invited some people to join him. Reb Shalom and I, we figured he's not ready. He just doesn't know enough about what to do, and he should really come with me. And I tried, I insisted, and he said, no, this is what I want to do. He believed that he would never have a family. And why? Why? He knew he couldn't impose his physical condition on anybody. He had to get used to the idea that the yeshiva will be his home forever, where he will conduct the Pesach Seder. You know, I could continue endlessly talking about it. As Reb Shalom said, like I said, anybody that's going to get up here, it's just going to be a broken record. You're going to hear it again and again and again, and the same thing again and again and again. We really don't understand. We don't comprehend the greatness of this man. We only know that we were blessed for some reason, siyata d'shmaya, that we had him in our midst for 2.5 years. And we hope and pray that, and again, there's no end to how much we can hear it again, because we all realize in our minds and our hearts that Hashem put us here for others. The whole topic of this Bria is Chesed. The first word of Torah, Beis, the last word of Torah, Lamed, Lev. The whole thing is giving your heart, caring about others. And we hope someday all of us will get the point to the ultimate extent. But Eliahu was our role model. He lived for us, for everybody around, and the loss is irretrievable. Nobody can replace him. And we only hope that he'll be a Melech Yosher, that Hashem took him away. As Rabbi Shalom said at this time, like Chazal tell us, when you lose a righteous person, it's like losing the temple. And our only consolation as a yeshiva, his friends, is that we know that he's not suffering anymore. There should be a Melech Yosher for all of us, a yeshiva, that for everything that he put in, his heart and soul into this place, we should never give up to keep this place going, whatever it takes, for both of us, for everybody around us. Dima, Baruch Hashem, Dima me'al kol panim, Hashem should wipe away the tears from our eyes, and we should not know any more suffering.
Anybody else would like to say, I'll add something. If not, Sylvia Fox wrote a book, Dirty Tzitzis, Shining the Shema. Oh, sorry. Sylvia Fox, Eliahu, and our great friend from Ramat Beit Shemesh, was very, very close to Eliahu and a great mentor and a good close friend. Wrote a young people's book for children called Dirty Tzitzis and Shining the Shema, and it's about Eliahu. And Sylvia wanted to make these available if anybody has any grandchildren, right, that they'd like to share a beautiful story with. It's written in the front that it's in Eliahu's memory, and it's about him. Right? So that was him. Dirty Tzitzis, clean, pure, shiny Bishama. Right? So if no one else is going to speak, right, again, we could keep going on and on. But like Rabbi Weiss said, we got to keep hearing it, right? Because he was such a great man, right? And how much he had. His mitos, he was learning like nobody else, like he said, but his mitos, an example of what it is for a person to take themselves to being somebody who comes to that close state of perfection, of really being a giving human being, a B'nai Abraham, right? Pure, Kulei Chesed. Right? So these will be available whoever wants there. Right? A gift from Rebbe to Sylvia. Right? We're all going to head out now. We have a bus waiting. We're by the bus stop. By the 38 bus stop, whoever wants to join us, we're going to go out to the Beis Gavaros. We're going to say the Tehillim. This being yesterday was the Shloshi. Thank everybody for coming. Thank everybody for listening. And to his family, thank you for being here with us. Right? Soon, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll get to meet and share personally, face to face, I hope, because we feel so connected to you. We feel so much love and deep connection, right? Thank you, everybody, and may Eliahu's memory be a source of blessing and encouragement for all of us. Here you go, everybody. Rabbi Weiss, you have the Mishnah, the Tehillim?